Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tathastu. Hello, good evening, everyone. So, in last class, we had discussed about August offer. Good evening, Pratiksha. Good evening, Jyoti. Good evening, Prajakta. So, all of you, very good evening. So, in last class, good evening, Pramila. Good evening, Ranjan. Very good evening. Good evening, ASR. Good evening, Ankit. Very warm good evening. So, if we see what we had discussed in the last class, हमने क्या discuss किया था last class में? So we had talked about August offer, which was given by the Viceroy Lord Linlithgow. Good evening, Kasbi. Good evening, Jitender. All of you, very good evening. So in last class we had discussed that Lord Linlithgow had given August offer to the Congress or to the Indian people. Good evening, Yaswant. Good evening, life of humans. Okay. Okay. Good evening, humans life. Good evening, Sanjay. Very good evening to all of you. And in response to that August offer, because in August offer, if we see, there were proposals like dominion status, constituent assembly after war, and all these things. And in response to that, Congress had rejected that offer and it had launched individual satyagraha, under which Gandhiji used to select the individuals who were to carry out these individual satyagraha. So we had seen that till that, and this satyagraha, this continued till December 1941. Now today we will discuss the next thing which happened in March 1942. Good evening, Sarika. Good evening, Meena. All of you, very good evening. So now what we will discuss is March 1942. And what happened in March 1932 is Sir Stafford Cripps visited India for a purpose, for a mission, and that was called Cripps mission. Good evening, Pinky. Good evening, Rekha. All of you, very good evening. So if we see the Cripps mission, the first question which arises is why Cripps mission came. First question which arises is Cripps mission आया ही क्यों? Why Cripps mission? Because as we have seen, good evening, Palmi. So as we had seen that during the August offer, government or the British Raj was reluctant to give power to the Congress. They were not ready to give power to the Congress. Good evening, CB. Then the question arises, the why now Cripps mission? What happened in between that the British government was forced to send this mission? ऐसा क्या हुआ कि उनको भेजना पड़ा क्रिप्स को इंडिया? So why Cripps mission? First thing. Second thing, what were its proposals? इसमें क्या क्या था? What were the things contained in this? And third thing which we will see is its evaluation, its assessment. Was it a successful mission or a failure? What were the reaction of Indian National Congress? What were the reaction of the leaders of Indian National Congress like Gandhiji, like Jawaharlal Nehru towards Cripps mission? So these are some of the things which we are going to cover in this lecture. So if we see March 1942, Sir Stafford Cripps. Now the question arises, who was Sir Stafford Cripps? In Britain, a war cabinet was constituted. A war cabinet had been formed. And who was the? Yes, March 1942, Jitender. And who was the head of that war cabinet? Winston Churchill. Who was the प्राइम मिनिस्टर, ठीक है. सो इन ब्रिटेन देयर वाज दिस वॉर कैबिनेट. This war cabinet was headed by, who was the prime minister? Winston Churchill. And Sir Stafford Cripps was one of the cabinet minister. One of the cabinet minister of this war cabinet. ठीक है? Yes, Jitendra. Yes, definitely. That was one of the aim to seek support of Indians. We will see that. So in Britain there was war cabinet, and who was the prime minister? Winston Churchill, and Sir Stafford Cripps was one of the cabinet minister. So that is the introduction for Cripps. Now the question arises that why Cripps was sent? Winston Churchill was the prime minister. Yes, Pinky. So the question arises why Cripps was sent. So first reason is why. First reason is the Japanese intervention. If you see the World War II, Japan, yes, to seek support from the Indians, Japan was carrying out in very lightning strikes against the British. Japanese victories were quite lightning, and it had surprised everyone. So what happened that Japanese lightning victories. Okay. Now the question arises where this was happening. This was happening at two places. This was happening at two places. One is Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia. If we see Southeast Asia, a number of countries are there. One were those who were British colonies. British colonies, example can be like Burma can be there, Malaya can be there, which is now Malaysia. In the same way, Singapore can be there. These were some of the colonies of Britain there in the Southeast Asia. Then there were French colony. French colonies included the place called Indochina, which is now Vietnam. Then there were Dutch colony, Indonesia. Then there were this American colony, Philippines. So all these, yes, Prime Minister was Churchill, right, Jitendra? So all these were the colonies, European colonies in Southeast Asia. And what Japan did? Japan defeated all these powers in these colonies. So the lightning victories of Japan in these colonies had brought Japan on the border of India. In fact, they had reached up to Rangoon, which was in Burma, now Myanmar. So all these were the European colonies, and Japan had defeated all these European powers and had reached the border of India. So one was this problem, that the victory of Japan in Southeast Asia. Second thing, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. What is Pearl Harbor? It was a American harbor where in Hawaii. Hawaii is the island. So it was basically a American harbor. So Japan attacked this Pearl Harbor also. So because of these things, because of this Japanese lightning victories in Southeast Asia as well as Pacific, because this Hawaii island, as you must be knowing, it is in Pacific Ocean. So because of these things, there was a pressure building on the British to act, to seek the support of the Indian in their war efforts. Why? Because Japan were quite successful militarily. They were waiting on the border of India. The probable invasion of India was no more a distant thing. It was going to happen very soon. So the probable invasion of India forced the British to seek the support of the Indian people in their war efforts. So first was the Japanese lightning victories. This forced the British to think for the support of the Indians. First thing is this. Second thing was the pressure on Britain. The pressure on Britain to act. There were two types of pressure. One was outside pressure, other was from inside. If we see outside pressure, there was United States President Roosevelt, US President. Then there was this Chinese leader, Chiang Kai-shek. They were putting pressure on the United States. They were putting pressure on the United States because Japan, Jitendra, I am digressing a little bit for you, because Japan in the last 1 century had developed a lot. They had copied the German model, the Persian model to develop themselves. They were not having so much resources, but they worked a lot on their manpower development, their human resource. In addition to that, they had also acquired a number of colonies in Korea, in China, from where they, in Manchuria, for example, you take, Manchuria was full of resources. Ores were there, minerals were there. So Japan was not having resources, but they had worked a lot on their skill development, on their human resources, and they were taking these resources from their nearby places like Manchuria in China and Korea. So from there they were getting resources. Japan had worked a lot in 100 years to make themselves so powerful, so militarily strong. So that is the answer to your question. We will not digress much. Why they were cruel? Actually, lot of militarism in Japan. Actually, if you see, I am digressing a little bit, but if you see the World War I and World War II, so you can say that there were a number of things which were driving these things, and one was militarism. A lot of militarism, and this was where this was happening. This was happening in Japan. Lot of nationalism, lot of armaments, imperialism. So these were some of the factors. These were some of the factors which were driving the World War II. So one was lot of militarism in Japan. Yes, one was obviously to expand their territories. So coming back here, so there was pressure or Britain from the United States President, the leader of the Chinese, to seek the support of the Indians in their war efforts. Why? Because Japan, Germany, Italy, they were winning against the allied forces. They were getting victories one after the other. So there was pressure on the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill to act. Another pressure was from inside. What was that? The Labour Party. The Labour Party in Britain. It was also putting pressure on the British government to act, to seek support of the Indians in their war efforts. Why? Because it has become necessary now. It has become indispensable now. Because Japanese were winning and they were on the borders of the country, border of our India. So this was the reason why Cripps mission was sent, because after the failure of the August offer, Congress had launched individual satyagraha, but nothing was happening from the British side. Then why they came up with this? Only because of these reasons: pressure on Britain, plus the success of Japanese. These were two most important reasons why Cripps mission came, why Sir Stafford Cripps was sent to India. When Cripps came, he said, what is the aim? Aim is the earliest realization of self-government in India. The earliest realization of self-government in India. So the Cripps said the aim of the British policy in India was to provide the earliest, or to ensure the earliest realization of self-government in India. But we will see that there were a lot of problems with this Cripps mission also. We will see one by one. So if we see Sir Stafford Cripps, he was sent with a draft declaration. He was sent with a draft declaration. What was this draft declaration? Actually, the War Cabinet in Britain had discussed about the proposals or the offers which can be given to the Indians, to the Indian people, to the Indian parties, and these were in the form of draft declaration, which were designed by, which were discussed by, negotiated by whom? Within the War Cabinet. And so Sir Stafford Cripps was given this draft declaration, and this draft declaration becomes what? They became the proposals. They became the proposals of Cripps mission. They became the proposals of Cripps mission. The draft declaration became the proposals of Cripps mission. Now we will see what were the proposals of Cripps mission. We will see what were the proposals of Cripps mission. Govind. टूट गया नहीं, ये क्या है? लगा तो फंसा दे इधर किधर. Sorry, there was some technical glitch. I am really sorry. So, as I was discussing that what were the proposals? What were the proposals of Cripps mission? What were the proposals given by the Stafford Cripps? So, first proposal was dominion status. Again, the same proposal as given in the August offer. The proposal of dominion status to the Indian Union. So that was the first proposal. If you see dominion status, what is the meaning of dominion status? पहले भी आपको बताया था. Dominion status means it is a transition thing. Either you are a colony or you are a free country. But in between, this is the status that is called dominion status, where for practical purposes you have autonomy, you have freedom, but you are not completely independent. The sovereignty is not with you. Sovereignty lies with British Crown. So you are not complete independence. So that is the thing, dominion status. So first proposal was dominion status. Second was post-war Constituent Assembly. The provision of post-war Constituent Assembly. Last year, a question in prelims had directly come from this provision. The questions in prelims directly come from these proposals, so we should be careful about them. So post-war Constituent Assembly provision was there. And what was there? This Constituent Assembly will be partly elected by provincial assemblies. So these will be partly elected by provincial assemblies and partly nominated partly nominated by princely estates. Based on this fact only, one question directly came last year on this Cripps mission. So this constituent assembly will be partly elected by provincial assemblies and partly nominated by princely estates. This was the second proposal. Third was the right to secede. Right to secede. Those provinces who do not want to form their own constitution, who do not want to become a part of Indian Union and form their own constitution, they can have their separate constitution. They can have their separate constitution. Those provinces who do not want to become a part of the Indian Union can have their separate constitution. So this basically, this was right to secede. So this was in a way to appease whom? To appease Muslim League. To appease Muslim League, and indirectly accepted demand for partition. Demand for partition. So if we see this, so it was to appease the Muslim League, and it indirectly accepted the demand for partition, the right to secede, to form the own constitution for those provinces who were not willing to become a part of the constitution of Union of India. So this was the third provision under Cripps mission. What was the fourth provision? Fourth provision was related to the Viceroy's Executive Council. The Viceroy's Executive Council. In this, all members to be Indian except one responsible for defense. So all members to be Indians except the one responsible for the defense of the country. Next provision was Viceroy's powers kept as it is and defense of India in British hands. So for defense of India, no power to be given to the Indians. It was kept under the British hands only. So these were some of the provisions or some of the proposals given by the Cripps mission. First was the provision of dominion status. Second was the provision of constituent assembly post World War. Third was the provision of right to secede to those provinces who were not willing to form the constitution of union together. So in a way it was indirectly, yes, they were very clever. So indirectly they accepted or accommodated the demand of the Muslim League and Muhammad Ali Jinnah to form Pakistan. Next was Viceroy's Executive Council, all members to be Indian except the defense member. And next was the Viceroy's powers, they were kept as it is, and defense was kept in the hands of the British. So these were some of the proposals of the Cripps mission. Now the question arises, what is the evaluation of Cripps mission? If we see the evaluation, or before evaluation, we can also see what was the reaction, what was the Indian reactions. So we can take two people. One was Gandhiji. Gandhiji said it was post-dated check. It was post-dated check on a crumbling bank. Gandhiji said that the proposals of Cripps mission were like a post-dated check on a crumbling bank. Why Gandhiji said this? Because post-dated check means a check whose date is going to come in future. Like I give you a check and tell you that you can encash this in 2060, in 2070. So that is a post-dated check. And on a crumbling bank, suppose a bank which is going to fail, which is going to become bankrupt, going to become crumble, if I am giving you a check of that bank and that too in 2070, will it count for you? It will not. It will be for you nothing. So that's why Gandhiji said it was a post-dated check on a crumbling bank. Why? Because all the proposals in the Cripps mission were after the World War. Post-war, everything they will give. They were not ready to give anything immediately. First thing is this. Second thing, the Japanese victory, Japanese lightning strikes had shattered the myth of British invincibility. They were on the doors of the India. They were on the border of India. So anytime the British power can fail, can crumble. That's why he said that it was a crumbling bank. The British power was going to collapse very soon. First thing is this. Second thing, Nehru. What Nehru said. If you read about Jawaharlal Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru was a very close friend of Stafford Cripps, and he wrote that when I read worthless, correct Jitendra. So Nehru wrote that when I read the proposals of Cripps mission for the first time, I was profoundly depressed by its provisions. So what Nehru said, that I was profoundly depressed when I read the provisions of Cripps mission for the first time. I was profoundly depressed. So that was the thing who said? Nehru said. And Gandhiji said that it was a post-dated check on a crumbling bank. So from these Indian reactions, you can easily guess that the reactions were not positive. They were in fact negative against the proposals of Cripps mission. They were making the promises, yes. They were making only the promises, and they were delaying all the thing after the results of World War II. Now we will evaluate the proposals of Cripps mission. So first take the Congress objections. Why Congress objected to this? See, first provision was dominion status. First provision was dominion status, which was completely unacceptable to British. Why? Because which was completely unacceptable to Indians. Why? Because the Congress said we have been talking about Purna Swaraj for last 10-12 years. We had talked about Purna Swaraj in 1929 itself in our Lahore session. अब और हम इस पे समझौता नहीं कर सकते हैं. We cannot compromise on that from the complete independence or Purna Swaraj. So dominion status will not work for us. So first objection was this. Second objection of Congress was, as I told you, this Constituent Assembly. In this Constituent Assembly, there was provision for partly nominated members. Nominated members. So the nominated members, Congress objected to this only, that in a Constituent Assembly which is going to be democratically elected, how can there be members nominated by the princess? That is not acceptable to us. So second objection was to the nomination of member by the princely estates. Third objection was right to secede. Third Congress objection was the right to secede. In a way, British is accepting indirectly or implicitly the demands of Pakistan, the demand of partition by the Muslim League and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Why Gandhiji Nehru did not ask, okay, we'll support, but the condition you won't partition. Actually, Jitendra, after some point of time, it was beyond the control of the British to stop the partition, because once the Muslim masses were mobilized, once the people were mobilized on the lines of religion, it became very difficult to stop this. So it was not really in the hands of the British also to stop this, because Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Muslim League were firmly in favor of the partition of India or for Pakistan. So Third objection to this was right to secede. Congress was not happy with this also, right to secede. Another objection of Congress was no immediate transfer of power. No immediate transfer of power, no immediate action, everything after post-war. So Congress was not happy with this. Congress had a lot of objections to the proposals of Cripps mission. Second thing, what was the reaction of Muslim League? Muslim League, though cited the provision of right to secede, yes, it was the dragon. Very, very right, Jitendra. It was really the main thing to which Congress was objecting. So Muslim League said that the right to secede was indeed our moral victory. British have accepted our demand, but they were not fully happy. Why? Because they said it is only indirect. We want it direct. We want it explicit, not implicit. So the British League also objected to the proposals of Cripps mission. Why? Because they said the demand of Pakistan was not explicitly mentioned in the proposals of Cripps mission. So that was the objection from the Muslim League. So Muslim League was also not very happy with the proposals of Cripps mission. Now comes the third side. There was one more party like Hindu Mahasabha. Hindu Mahasabha was not, yes, very right, Sayak Chakravarti. Religion have been a very sensitive issue. Earlier it was not that sensitive, Chakravarti, but yes, with the coming of the British and the careful deployment of the policy of divide and rule, the religion had emerged as a major issue, major divisive issue, which were utilized by the British to divide India, to manipulate the sentiments. Very right, very correctly said. So Muslim League objected to this. Another party which was, Namaste Manoj, another party which was Hindu Mahasabha. Hindu Mahasabha was also not happy. Why? Because now also if you see the stand of the Hindu parties, Hindu Mahasabha is for what? Akhand Bharat. They talk about Akhand Bharat. So they were not happy with this. Why? Because the right to secede was the elephant in the room. So Hindu Mahasabha also objected to the proposals of Cripps mission. But what was the British aim with this Cripps mission? We should also look at that, because obviously Indians were objecting to this. But what British were thinking about this Cripps mission? What was the intention of Britain? What was the intention of Britain or the British Prime Minister, British War Cabinet about this Cripps mission? So if we see this, the British Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for India, Amri, Lord Linlithgow, the Viceroy, none of them wanted Cripps mission to succeed. They did not want Cripps mission to succeed, because Cripps mission was sent just for an eyewash. It was just a showpiece, a propaganda device. It was not meant for any real purpose. They did not want this to succeed. That's why what they did was that Cripps was not given freedom to bargain and negotiate with the Indian leaders. So Sir Stafford Cripps was not given the freedom to bargain and negotiate with the Indian leaders. In fact, the British War Cabinet had strictly told Sir Stafford Cripps that you have to stick to the draft declaration. So the draft declaration which was given to the Cripps, it was said that you have to stick to this draft declaration. You are not supposed to go beyond this. You are not supposed to negotiate with the Indian leaders beyond what is given in the draft declaration. That's why many people say that it was the incapacity of the Cripps to bargain and negotiate, which led to the failure of the Cripps mission. So in reality, British government never wanted Cripps mission to succeed, and that was also one of the reasons why it failed, because Cripps could not negotiate beyond a point of time, beyond a point with the Indian leaders. So that is also one of the reason. क्यों ऐसा हुआ? Why they did this? Because suppose Cripps went beyond its mandate and they negotiate something with the Indians, so there is possibility of India getting independence, India gaining independence, and that will be a huge setback to the British. British, understand this, British never wanted India to be free. India was their largest resource, the largest colony, and it was a source of mineral resource, manpower resource, every kind of resource that British were getting. So they never wanted India to be free. That's why they intentionally sabotaged the Cripps mission. They intentionally torpedoed the Cripps mission. They did not want it to succeed. So these were some of the reasons because of which Cripps mission did not succeed. Congress objected to this, Muslim League objected to this, Hindu Mahasabha objected to this, and the British War Cabinet led by British Prime Minister Mr. Churchill, Secretary of State Amri, and the Viceroy Lord Linlithgow, they also did not want it to succeed. So that's all in today's lecture of Cripps mission. Because of the failure of this, we will see that the patience of Congress will run thin, and it will launch another movement, another mass movement, that will be Quit India movement. So in next class we will see Quit India movement. That's all in today's lecture. Thank you all of you.